What can be heard in the silence when the fires die down and the grand story pauses for a moment? We will peek into those very moments left between the pages of the Chronicles. When Strider guards the borders alone, when Gollum sorts through his treasures, or when Sam hums softly, watching over a sleeping Frodo. Write in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. And now, make yourself comfortable. Imagine the crackle of a campfire or the whisper of an ancient forest, and let the story begin. Imagine time isn't just an abstract line, not a sequence of minutes, hours, or even familiar days and years. What if it could be tangible? What if it's so ancient, so primordial, that you can almost feel it, like a low, drawn-out hum emanating from the very depths of the earth, penetrating every cell of your being? There are places on our planet where time itself flows unhurriedly. There, it doesn't rush, but rather breathes, inhaling entire millennia and slowly, leisurely, exhaling centuries, like a colossal, eternally living being. In such corners, every stone, every branch, every winding stream holds countless, unfathomable stories. Their silent yet powerful whisper is accessible only to a few, to those with enough sensitivity and deep patience to truly, with their whole soul, listen to the world around them. And most surprisingly, there are voices, not just sounds made by vocal cords, but something much more. These are voices that are themselves a living bridge, laid across this immeasurable depth of ages, capable of effortlessly transporting you into these boundless, endless expanses of antiquity and unthinkable long-gone eras. Imagine not just an ordinary twilight forest, but the true, living, beating heart of the world itself. Here, the trees are so old, so deeply rooted in time, that they remember the bygone days when tall, snow-capped mountains were just young, barely risen hills, and vast seas were only beginning to fill their deep, forming shores, slowly spreading across continents. Imagine such an evening. The last crimson and golden rays of the setting sun gently glide, coloring the tops of ancient oaks and century-old widely spread beaches as if bidding farewell to the fading day. The air is permeated with the damp, cool scent of moss, decaying, sodden leaves, and deep, moist earth, creating a dense, almost tangible atmosphere steeped in antiquity and mystery. It was on such an evening that two small, inconspicuous creatures found themselves captive to this immense, all-encompassing grandeur. They were hobbits, small, but surprisingly resilient and curious beings, fortunate enough by fate, or perhaps simply due to their restless, inherently hobbitish curiosity about the world, to find themselves so far from their cozy, warm hobbit holes in the blessed Shire. They found themselves under the canopy of one of the most mysterious and, undoubtedly, most mighty, most ancient creatures of this world one could possibly imagine. His name was Treebeard. The very name sounded like an ancient song, like the long drawn-out whisper of thousand-year-old winds that ceaselessly sweep through the crowns of colossal trees, carrying with them the sense of past, long-gone eras and faint echoes of old events. He wasn't just a talking tree, as uninitiated mortals might think. He was a true shepherd of trees, one of the first to walk this earth. He remembered it even before the elves learned their first ringing songs, and long before men ever came into being, leaving their first tentative footprints on the untrodden soil. And his voice, oh, Treebeard's voice. It wasn't just a sound, familiar to human or elven ears. It was a fundamental, deepest vibration. It was a low, guttural hum, seemingly coming from the very depths of the earth, from its stony heart. It resonated not only with the deeply rooted tree roots and ancient lichen-covered stones, but also with the air itself, and even with the deep, silent memory of the world, contained within every atom of its being. When he spoke, it seemed as if the entire earth around them slowly, almost imperceptibly, but tangibly vibrated. Old stones trembled in sync with his words, and the thick, wrinkled bark of trees softly, rhythmically pulsed, like the enormous, ancient, living heart of the world. In every word of his, there was an unimaginable weight of ages, as if each name he uttered was not just a word, but an entire tome of ancient knowledge, compressed into a single, deep sound vibration, permeating everything around, every particle of existence. The Hobbits, at first, were of course absolutely terrified by his unimaginable size, his immense natural power, which could easily compare to the highest mountain or eternity. But very quickly, literally within moments, they felt a deep, calming, all-encompassing tranquility emanating from him. This was the tranquility that only unimaginable, unfathomable antiquity can bring. A complete absence of haste, an absolute, all-pervading acceptance of everything that is and has been, and that which will yet be in the infinite flow of time. No rush, no anxiety, only slow, majestic, inexorable movement. They sat at his feet, so tiny next to his huge moss and lichen-covered feet that they would seem like barely noticeable mushrooms or fallen pine cones, and listened. They listened to what Treebeard himself called his songs, although to an ordinary, unprepared listener, it was nothing like familiar, melodious tunes. You see, these weren't songs in our usual human, or even elvish, understanding. There were no familiar notes, no ringing rhymes, no neat verses, or repetitive choruses that could be easily memorized and hummed by a campfire. These were long, drawn-out, echoing, deep enumerations. Enumerations of names. Names of trees, of course, those he had known since their very birth, from the times when they were just tiny, fragile sprouts barely breaking through the earth. He named rivers, whose waters tirelessly carved their way through ancient, immovable rocks, whispering their own unhurried history. Names of mountains, whose cloud-piercing peaks reached for the heavens for millennia, observing the world below. But not just those. He enumerated the names of stars, those that burned above the world in forgotten eras, when the world was still young and innocent, barely formed. Names of winds that rustled in the leaves for centuries, carrying with them the dust of ancient times and the seeds of future forests. These were not just dry lists, not boring catalogs or registers. Each element in this immense, endless enumeration was filled with such history, such colossal weight, such deep, all-encompassing meaning, that an ordinary word transformed into an entire centuries-old saga, a living, breathing tapestry of the past, unfolding directly before their inner eye as if by magic. He spoke of a time when the forest was not yet called Fangorn, because there was no need for names, when there were no other forests to distinguish it from, when it was a single, immense expanse. He spoke of how this forest stretched from the furthest sea, whose waves murmured against the sandy shore, to the highest cloud-piercing mountains, whose peaks touched the heavens and were shrouded in eternal clouds and mysteries. He recalled times when there were no beaten paths yet, only barely visible trails forged by wild beasts, silently gliding through the forest depths, and by the first elves, whose steps were light as falling leaves, leaving barely discernible traces. He enumerated the names of ancient oaks, each of which, if transported to the Hobbit Shire, could become not just a grove, but an entire forest, so vast, majestic, and full of their own life they were. He mentioned rivers, whose waters flowed through hundreds, even thousands of generations of living beings, through ages, carrying with them echoes of antiquity and the whispers of long-gone civilizations. And their names sounded like flowing water, gently rolling from the Ent's lips, filling the air with the cool dampness of a time echo that could almost be heard. A Lorien Malorn, a Sylvanon Lorelinde, a Endor Dorvinian, he rumbled, and these sounds, though utterly alien to the hobbit's ears, carried within them an immense, wild, primordial beauty, and an immense, almost physically tangible weight of history, which pressed upon them, yet did not oppress, but rather lulled them. These were not just names invented by men or even elves in their languages. These were words in a tongue that was as old as the trees themselves, as the earth itself, as the ancient mountains rising above the world. These names required no translation to be understood. They carried their meaning in their very sonority, in the deep, resonant vibration they evoked not only in the air around, but also in the depths of the listeners' souls, penetrating their most hidden corners into the very core of their being. Each name was like a huge, perfectly smooth stone, dropped into the deep, bottomless lake of time, and the ripples from this fall spread across the entire surface of the world, reaching the furthest, most hidden shores of consciousness, making them tremble with the surging, all-consuming antiquity. The hobbits sat, leaning their backs against his mighty, warm, rough trunk, which seemed to be both living stone and ancient tree at once. They felt how gently, yet powerfully, this enormous tree pulsed in rhythm with the deep bass notes of his voice, as if they were sitting inside a colossal, living bell whose vibrations permeated them entirely. The leaves on the branches above them rustled softly and uniformly, as if echoing Treebeard's words, catching each long, drawn-out deep phrase and gently repeating it, carrying it into the mysterious, unexplored depths of the forest, where their voices merged with the whisper of the night. This was no ordinary wind that caused the leaves to move in such an unusual way. It was the responsive whisper of the forest itself, its silent echo, answering the call of its shepherd, its ancient guardian, who had conversed with it for centuries. Every word of the Ent seemed a part of an immense ancient dialogue that had been conducted between him and the forest for countless, unfathomable ages, a dialogue to which the hobbits, to their surprise and awe, were now privy. Treebeard's voice was utterly hypnotic. He wasn't trying to put them to sleep, nor was he using any magical charms, but his very depth, his endless, meditative monotony, filled with infinite, universal meaning, slowly, irresistibly enveloped them, like a soft, warm, fluffy blanket woven from time and antiquity, wrapping them from all sides. Each long exhalation, each drawn-out, deep pronouncement of the name of an ancient hill or a long-forgotten stream seemed to slow their own breathing, synchronizing it with the slow, eternal, inexorable rhythm of the forest, with the pulse of the earth itself, which breathed along with them. Their hearts, usually beating so quickly and lightly, also began to slow their pace, merging with the grandiose, unhurried beat of Fangorn's heart. They stopped trying to understand the words. The meaning wasn't in specific, logically structured words, but in the feeling, in the sense of boundless, immense time that enveloped them from all sides, erasing all boundaries between past, present, and future, making them a single whole. In the feeling that they were a tiny, yet integral, significant part of something so grand, so eternal, that the human mind could barely contain or comprehend it. They felt the tree roots deep underground, reaching for invisible but palpable waters, felt the life-giving sap slowly flowing through the trunks, felt the unhurried but steady growth, which for an ent was quick and noticeable, but for a human, endless, barely perceptible to the eye. Treebeard sang of the sun that had seen thousands of dawns, of the moon that had lit thousands of nights. He sang of how mountains were born from the earth's depths, rising to the sky, and how immense seas receded, revealing new lands, new horizons, of how the world changed, while the ancient trees, his children, and his charges stood, observing, remembering, living, untouched by the hustle and fleetingness of rapidly passing events. His songs were history itself, engraved not on fragile stone or in transient scrolls, but in the very soul of the world, in its deep, unchanging memory, passed from generation to generation, not by writings, but by the very essence of being, by the very breath of nature. In his voice, there was no hurry, no regret for anything, no anxiety for the future, only the deep, slow, inexorable, endless flow of time that embraced them. He did not sing of great battles or heroic deeds, so often recounted by elves or men in their short but vivid lives. His songs were about the very foundations of the world, about growth, about strong, deep roots, about firm earth, about pure water, about life-giving light and soothing shade, about the slow, majestic dance of existence that continues regardless of the bustle and transience of mortal races. It was a song of life that never ends, but merely slowly, solemnly transforms, moving from one form to another. Gradually, very slowly, the Hobbit's eyes began to close. Treebeard's voice transformed from distinct, albeit echoing sounds, into a single, encompassing, all-pervading hum, which vibrated in their chests, in their bones, in every tiny cell of their small, but now surprisingly receptive bodies. The rustling of leaves above them became a soft, soothing, almost maternal whisper, as if the forest itself, with tenderness and care, lulled them, immersing them in serene, deep slumber. The scent of moss and earth, which was initially just background, became even stronger, more enveloping, like the fragrance of an ancient, safe, deep cradle created by nature itself, beckoning them into its embrace. They sank into sleep, but it was no ordinary everyday sleep they were accustomed to in their cozy hobbit holes. This was a sleep permeated with the feeling of immense, all-consuming time. They felt as if they themselves were becoming part of the forest, that their invisible roots extended deep into the earth, intertwining with the roots of ancient trees, and their thoughts stretched towards distant, shimmering stars that watched over the world from the height of ages. In their dreams, they saw vague but powerful images, shadows of ancient trees dancing under the moon in a soundless, majestic dance, huge, motionless silhouettes of giants slowly traversing primordial, untouched forests, streams of water flowing for millennia, tirelessly carving their paths through unyielding stones, creating deep canyons and wide valleys. Their dreams were filled with echoing, resonating vibrations, deep echoes of Treebeard's voice, which continued to vibrate deep within their subconscious, forming new neural connections, expanding the boundaries of their perception to unprecedented limits. They heard names they couldn't pronounce while awake, but which in their sleep seemed absolutely comprehensible, as if their very souls understood the ancient, primeval language of the forest, its silent yet eloquent history. A rum forlorn, a vinduhelm, a Aaron morn, a nin cuivi. The winds whispered to them in their sleep, and each name was an entire universe, an entire world unfolding before their closed eyes, filling them with a sense of boundlessness. They slept a deep, restorative sleep, granted only by such a complete, undivided immersion into the very essence of the ancient world, into its unhurried but powerful rhythm. Their small hobbit souls, usually accustomed to the cozy, measured, predictable life of the Shire, expanded, encompassing the infinitude of time, the immense power of nature, the unshakable serenity of ages, which was as ancient as the world itself. The awakening would not be quick, nor abrupt. It would be slow, like a dawn in a deep, dense forest, when the first rays of sun barely penetrate through the thick canopy of crowns. And when they finally opened their eyes, the world would seem a little different to them. It would be the same, but they themselves would be changed, forever marked by that extraordinary night under the living forest's canopy, where Treebeard's song became a deep, all-encompassing lullaby for their souls, and the sense of immense time, an integral part of themselves, their new, expanded worldview, enriching them forever. Such an experience leaves a truly indelible mark. It changes not only perspective, but the very perception of reality. After such a night under the starry sky of Fangorn, listening to these ancient enumerations, you realize that your life, however long and rich it may be, is merely a brief moment compared to the age of an ancient oak, let alone an entire, immense forest that has existed for millennia. But this brief moment gains a special, incomparable value when you feel yourself a part of something so grand, so eternal, and all-encompassing. This is not just a story about two small hobbits and a wise ancient ent. It is a profound reflection on time, on the inexhaustible memory of the world, on how deeply we can immerse ourselves in history simply by listening to the whisper of trees, to the hum of the earth, to the absolute enveloping silence of the night, which itself is filled with millions of sounds. And perhaps, if you ever find yourself in a very old, dense forest at dusk, when the shadows lengthen and the world stands still, and you hear a deep, echoing, resonating sound coming from the very depths of the earth, know this. Perhaps it is not just the wind. Perhaps it is one of the ancient songs, Treebeard's song, and may it lull you into a sleep full of immense time and ancient, living, breathing history that will stay with you forever. If you enjoyed this journey into the depths of time and magic, don't forget to like this video. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new amazing stories, and leave a comment. Tell us, what is the oldest forest or place you have ever visited? Have you ever wondered what else Gollum valued besides his precious? What if I told you that this wretched, tormented creature, an entity many of us know as being obsessed with only one thing, actually possessed another, completely secret treasure, a collection that brought him genuine, unadulterated peace, something he cherished that was entirely unrelated to the all-consuming, destructive power of the One Ring? Welcome to a world you never expected to see, a world where the darkness of a cave hides an astonishing, almost touching secret, the world of Gollum's smooth stone collection, his hidden treasures. We are used to imagining Smeagol, who gradually transformed into Gollum, solely through the prism of his boundless, monstrous obsession with the One Ring. His piercing, strained whispers his constant desperate attempts to reclaim his precious, his greed, his cunning, and his malice. All of this forms our image of this creature, his deformed, tragic essence. But what if behind this thick veil of darkness, behind those agonizing moans and hisses, in the very depths of his dark, damp, cold cave, there lurked another, much quieter, more personal, almost innocent side of his twisted nature? A side that, perhaps instinctively, sought solace not in power, not in control over others, but in simple, tangible things that offered pure, personal satisfaction, without any evil taint? Let's try to imagine this specific world of Gollum, a world in which he spent centuries, isolated from light, from living creatures, from any semblance of normal, natural life. Eternal, impenetrable darkness, only rarely, very rarely, disturbed by a faint, ghostly light penetrating from somewhere above, or by the sinister, hypnotic glow of his soul, all-consuming and destructive true obsession. Water, cold, silent, constantly gurgling and dripping, surrounded his dwelling, seeping through cracks in the stones, forming the unique microclimate of his refuge. This is a world where ordinary sight, our usual understanding of visual images, plays absolutely no role whatsoever. Here, entirely different senses come to the forefront, sharpened to the extreme. Hearing, catching the slightest rustle, every movement and every drop of water. Smell, distinguishing the odors of dampness, ancient stone, stale slime, and rare, lurking, timid creatures. But most importantly, and central to our story about Gollum today, touch, his sensitive fingers. It was touch that was his soul, his most reliable and constant guide in this endless dark labyrinth of his subterranean existence. His fingers, long, thin, sinewy, incredibly sensitive, constantly, tirelessly explored the surrounding space. Rough, sharp edges of rocks, covered with slippery moss, cold, penetrating water flowing over the stones. And among all this, in the most unexpected places, something special. Something that made him instinctively stop, bend down, carefully pick up, and hold close. It was a smooth stone, his new companion. These stones were his silent, yet profound comfort. Invisible to outside eyes, they were his secret friends, his loyal, quiet listeners during endless, lonely years. Each one was found with difficulty, with persistence, in the depths of the underground lake's waters, on its stony bottom, or washed out by the relentless currents from narrow, hidden rocky crevices from which he so often sourced food. And each such stone possessed its own unique history, its inimitable shape, its utterly special, indescribable feel under his sensitive fingers. Gollum did not seek the glitter of jewels in these finds. He sought neither gold nor silver, nor the shimmer of rare stones that might adorn crowns or scepters. He was attracted only by perfect, flawless smoothness, that very smoothness polished by millennia of flowing, relentless, fluid water. A stone that fit perfectly in his palm, which could be rolled between his fingers, feeling its primordial, natural coolness, and then slowly, gradually warming it with the heat of his own emaciated skin. A stone whose form was most ideal, without a single sharp corner, without the slightest unevenness, pure and perfect in its pristine, natural simplicity. When Gollum pulled a new specimen of his treasure from the water, he did so with indescribable tenderness, almost reverently. He carefully, with extreme precision, cleaned it of algae, of silt, of clinging dirt, running his fingers over it like a blind, yet incredibly skilled sculptor studying his just finished, or rather, just found creation. It was a moment of pure, deep, genuine satisfaction. This was not the feverish, painful joy that always accompanied the possession of the ring, not the poisonous euphoria of having it, but a calm, deep, quiet happiness from finding something truly beautiful, and most importantly, absolutely harmless to his tormented soul. His collection grew, becoming his silent companion and his main secret. He kept it in carefully chosen, hidden, meticulously camouflaged niches of his cave, far from any curious eyes, even from a stray, wandering beam of light, should one miraculously penetrate his domain. This was his personal sanctuary, his hiding place, his refuge from endless despair, from the agonizing obsession with the ring, from eternal hunger, cold, and loneliness. The ritual began in the quietest, most secluded hours of his subterranean existence. In complete, absolute darkness, when even the echo of his own strained breathing seemed too loud, and rare drops of water falling from the ceiling sounded like bells, Gollum slowly, almost reverently, took out his secret, priceless treasures. Not all at once, no, but one by one, or a few specimens at a time, so that each stone could receive proper, individual attention, so that he could feel each one in its fullness. He laid them out before him on a smooth, flat section of stone that served as his personal altar of calm and tranquility. His fingers glided over the surface of each stone, feeling every microscopic unevenness, every indentation, every perfect line. Here was an oval one, resembling the eggs of unknown ancient creatures, perhaps unborn or long extinct. Here was a flat one, like a meticulously carved disc, shaped by nature itself. And here was an elongated one, resembling a drop of frozen water, fallen from an invisible stalactite. And tiny, perfectly round pebbles that easily fit between two fingers, bringing an instant sense of perfection and completeness. He knew each of them by touch, without a shadow of a doubt. He remembered where and how he found each specimen, as if these were events worthy of chronicle and eternal memory. This was his personal, intimate meditation, his way to forget for a while about the never-ending, agonizing hunger, about the bone-chilling cold, about the unbearable, constantly growing pressure exerted on him by the ring, slowly but surely tearing his soul apart. In these precious moments, he was neither Smeagol nor Gollum. He was simply a creature enjoying a simple, tangible, pure world. He might mumble something to himself, but these mumblings were entirely different from those dedicated to his precious, the ring. They were soft, soothing, almost gentle, filled with something that very remotely resembled love and tenderness. "My precious stones," he might whisper, sifting through them, feeling their smoothness and coolness. "My smooth treasures. No one knows about you. Only us. My. But this my here was different. It did not carry the poison of absolute possessiveness. It was not infected by the dark greed and degradation that the ring brought. This was a pure possession, based solely on aesthetic pleasure, on tactile delight, and on the deep, inner comfort these stones gave him, soothing his wounded heart. Each stone had its strictly defined place in his complex system. Gollum developed an incredibly complex, yet entirely intuitive system of arrangement, understood only by him. Perhaps by size, perhaps by shape, or by that special, unique smoothness that distinguished one stone from a dozen others. He could spend hours, seemingly endlessly, rearranging them, creating new patterns, new compositions, until he achieved that most ideal order that only he could understand and appreciate. This ideal order brought him incredibly deep satisfaction, giving him a rare, almost forgotten sense of control over something, anything, in his chaotic, miserable, tragic life. Imagine this astonishing, almost incredible sight. A creature whose soul is torn in two, whose existence is an eternal torment, a never-ending torture, finds peace and tranquility in the simple touch of a water-polished stone. This is an amazing, almost touching detail that reveals an unexpected depth of his inner struggle, his desperate attempts to preserve something human. The stones were his anchor, his only connection to something pure, untainted by evil. They promised him no power, tempted him with no darkness, whispered no world domination. They simply were. Smooth, cool, soothing, granting rare moments of true peace. This ritual was his secret, precious escape, his personal portal to another calmer world. In these moments, he could almost, at least for a short time, forget about the existence of the precious, that it lay somewhere nearby, slowly, day by day, devouring the last, fragile remnants of his once good soul. The stones gave him a precious respite, a tiny but incredibly valuable space of calm in this turbulent, raging ocean of his consciousness, constantly stormy with internal conflicts. They were his little, personal, cherished paradise, created from the simplest, seemingly insignificant elements of the earth, yet filled with incredible value for him. He didn't just collect stones, he felt them, he understood them, he engaged in a silent dialogue with them that was accessible only to him. Every chip, every indentation, every vein, invisible in the pitch blackness of the cave, but tangible under his sensitive, experienced fingers, told him its own unique story, a story of time, of the relentless flow of water, of nature's boundless patience. And Gollum, in his mutilated, twisted form, was its sole, true, albeit strange, connoisseur. His eyes, accustomed to the darkness, still couldn't see their true beauty, but his fingers could feel it, and that was more important to him than any sight. Perhaps this collection was the last, barely discernible echo of Smeagol, the very one who once lived by the river, who cherished simple pleasures, simple joys, before the curse of the ring completely consumed him, stripping him of everything human. A small, fragile island of normalcy in a sea of all-consuming madness that slowly but surely engulfed his mind. He was the keeper of these secrets, these silent witnesses to his most cherished, albeit strange, moments of happiness. Moments when he could simply be Smeagol, enjoying a found treasure, unburdened by anyone's fate but his own. So, the next time you think of Gollum, try, even for a moment, not to imagine only his greed, his malice, and his insane obsession. Try to imagine him in the silence of his dark, damp cave, with closed or half-closed, as if in a trance, eyes intently sifting through his smooth, time, and water-polished treasures, feeling their pleasant weight, their cool temperature, their ideal perfect form that so delighted his tormented soul. This was his little secret treasure, which no hero, no villain would ever try to take from him, because its value lay solely in the sensation, in quiet, personal pleasure. This was his world, created from the simplest, seemingly inconspicuous stones, yet filled with the deepest meaning and an astonishing, almost ethereal peace that was so inaccessible to him in other aspects of his tragic, miserable, cursed life. This was not just a collection. It was his refuge, his meditation, his last, most fragile, but real piece of light in the bottomless darkness that had consumed him. And perhaps it was this tiny, uncorrupted joy that allowed him to endure for so incredibly long, to preserve the remnants of himself, to ultimately play his role in saving Middle-earth. The stones were his last hope for a connection to a world where some pure, absolutely unadulterated joy and peace could still exist. If you found this unexpected insight into Gollum's world intriguing, please give this video a like, share it with fellow fans, and subscribe for more deep dives into your favorite stories. What other hidden depths do you think characters might possess? Let me know in the comments below. Have you ever truly experienced silence? Not the kind you find out in the countryside, where you can still pick out the chirping of a cricket or the faint sigh of the wind through the trees. No, I mean a silence that just presses in on you, thick as a damp wool blanket, so heavy it makes you hear the very beat of your own heart. Or, even stranger, the soft, steady rhythm of someone else's breathing right next to you. In moments like that, when the whole world is swallowed by an absolute inky blackness, and the only light left is the tiny, struggling flicker of your dying campfire, you start to understand just how powerful silence can be. You feel it pushing down on your shoulders, on your chest, seeping into your ears, making every little rustle in the dark sound like a clap of thunder. And then, there it is, a quiet, gentle exhale. You can barely make it out, but it's constant. That's Frodo. He's sleeping. He sleeps. And I stay awake. This is my watch, you see. My duty. Like a tiny, stubborn candle holding back the night. And as I sit here, hunched over these smoldering embers, just watching his peaceful face, I can't shake this feeling. This profound sense of how unbelievably fragile this whole moment is. He trusts me with his life, with his hope. Everything we carry, this whole crushing burden, it feels like it's all concentrated right there, in his quiet breathing. Each soft inhale and exhale is like the drumbeat to which my own worries and anxieties dance. I listen to him. He breathes deep, so serenely, as if he isn't dreaming of some fiery eye or an encroaching shadow. As if we aren't stuck right in the middle of this merciless, desolate wasteland, where every single stone could be hiding a danger, and every shadow seems to hold a threat. It feels like even the very air around us has just frozen, too afraid to disturb this sacred, yet oh so delicate quiet. There are no birds, no insects buzzing, no distant hint of civilization. Just the two of us, alone in the whole wide world, under this vast, uncaring sky. My eyelids are growing heavier than stones, I tell you, but I fight against the urge to just give in and close them. Sleep? That's a luxury I absolutely cannot afford. Not now. Not here. Every single cell in my body is screaming for rest, just begging for it. But duty. Duty's a good deal stronger than any scream. I can feel the cold, you know? It's working its way through my clothes, seeping right under my skin. The ground beneath me is hard, rocky, and even this thin cloak I'm wrapped in offers no escape from the biting, damp chill that just rises up from it, like an invisible mist enveloping everything. I try to wrap my arms tighter around my knees, hoping to find some warmth, but it's just no use. The cold isn't just something you feel on your skin. It's a feeling that digs deep, right down into your very soul, constantly reminding you of how vulnerable we are, and of this boundless, hostile space that just surrounds us. Every little rustle, every distant snap of a branch, it instantly makes my heart jump, clench up tight in my chest. It could be the wind, couldn't it? Or it could be something else entirely. Something out there, looking for us. Something that doesn't sleep. I look over at Frodo again. His hair is spread out across his cloak, his face so pale in the faint glow of these embers. He looks so very fragile, so impossibly small, just lying there, right in the middle of this wild, unwelcoming land. He's my master, of course, but right now, he seems more like my ward, just a child almost, in such desperate need of protection and care. I feel this powerful urge to shield him from the whole world, from every single danger, to wrap him in a warm, impenetrable blanket of safety. But I know it's just not possible, is it? The only thing I can do, the only thing, is to be here, to be vigilant, to be his eyes and ears while he gets the strength he'll need so badly tomorrow, when the sun finally decides to rise again over this desolate, endless landscape. I just look at him, and my thoughts, they just drift away, so far away, through the icy cold of this unending night, through the impenetrable darkness, all the way back home, to the Shire. Oh, the Shire. How long ago was that, really? It feels like only a few months, maybe. But those few months, they've held a whole lifetime, I swear. A lifetime crammed full of horror and despair. And back home, in the Shire, I just know everything is still the same. The apple trees, blooming, their delicate petals just falling gently onto the fresh, rain-scented earth. The noisy tavern, where hobbits laugh, bellies shaking, at Barlam and Butterbur's jokes, their ale mugs clinking loudly against sturdy wooden tables, filling the air with such familiar, ringing laughter and friendly chatter. My own little garden, where I put so much love and care into growing my pumpkins and potatoes, where every tiny, tender sprout was like a child to me, and the rich, damp scent of the earth mingled with the intoxicating perfume of blooming roses, just creating this unique, perfect harmony of nature. How I miss them. The smell of fresh-baked bread drifting from Mrs. Goody's bakery, the morning dew on the grass, sparkling like 1,000 tiny diamonds under the very first rays of the sun, the warm sun breaking through the clouds after a summer rain, leaving behind nothing but freshness and purity. The simple, yet so profoundly real happiness that was found in the comfort of one's home, in the pure joy of a good harvest, in kind neighbors, and just a plain, understandable life. I remember sitting with Frodo on the bench, right by the entrance to Bag End, just smoking our pipes and watching the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in these incredible shades of orange and purple. The air was thick, with the scent of smoke from neighboring hobbit holes and dinner being prepared. We could hear the laughter of children playing freely in the field, so carefree. Back then, the world felt so vast, yes, but also so incredibly safe. We couldn't have even begun to imagine that somewhere, far, far away, beyond our green, gentle hills, such darkness, such a threat existed. A threat that could swallow everything we held so dear. And now, sitting here in this gloomy, deserted place, these memories, they feel almost unreal to me, like they belong to another life entirely, to someone else. But you know what? They're my anchor, my constant reminder of what all this suffering, is truly for. It's these very thoughts, these simple, powerful thoughts, that keep me awake. They're like tiny little fireflies in this endless, consuming darkness, just flickering somewhere far off, right at the very edge of my mind. They remind me why we're enduring all this, why Frodo is carrying this unbearable, soul-crushing burden. It's so that the Shire can remain exactly as it is, green and peaceful, so that children can go on playing in those green fields without ever knowing the fear and horror of war, so that gardens keep blooming and ovens keep getting lit, so that warm, inviting light streams from every single window, and abundant, delicious food is on every table, so that no one ever remembers that such a terrible threat as Mordor once existed, a threat capable of destroying our entire world. It's strange, isn't it? In a moment like this, when there's nothing but danger and despair all around you, you cling to the very simplest things, to the most ordinary, mundane memories, to the image of a burning fireplace in a warm, cozy hobbit hole, to the comforting crackle of logs and the soft, encompassing warmth, to a cup of hot tea with milk and honey cakes, the kind my mother used to make so deliciously, to the familiar voice of a neighbor calling out for supper, and the pleasant, quiet anticipation of an evening spent with good friends. These aren't just memories, you see. They're a promise I make to myself and to Frodo, a promise that we will return home, and all this will become real again, that this nightmare will finally end, and the sun will shine over the Shire once more, truly free, without the shadow of Mordor ever looming. My hand, quite without thinking, reaches for the backpack lying right next to me, just barely visible in this gloom. Inside, it is the most precious and, at the very same time, the most terrible burden in the entire world. The ring. It seems so weightless, doesn't it, when you don't think about it, when it's just lying in your pocket. But its weight, it presses on both of us, harder and harder with each passing day, seeping into our thoughts, poisoning our very souls. I can feel this pressure even when it's not on me, even when I'm just watching Frodo. It permeates Frodo's thoughts. I see it in his pale face, in the terrible weariness in his eyes, in the slowness with which he moves now. He's become paler, quieter, more withdrawn. His eyes sometimes just stare into emptiness, as if he's seeing something hidden from my sight, something truly terrible and inescapable. He looks through me, through this world, as if his mind is already partly somewhere else, in another dimension, somehow linked to that sinister thing. And in those moments, oh, I just want to cry out. I want to grab that burden, rip it from his hands, feel its weight on my own neck, just so he could finally rest. But I can't. I'm just Sam. All I can do is be here, to hold his hand tightly when he stumbles, when his legs just give out from sheer exhaustion and despair. I can try to ward off his despair with my simple words, with just my presence, with my unwavering, stubborn faith. I can remind him of the Shire, of those green fields and warm hobbit holes, of all the good things that are truly worth fighting for. Sometimes I even feel as if I can sense the ring itself whispering to him, trying to break his will, to worm its way into the most secret, vulnerable corners of his very soul. It's like a cold, insidious whisper, audible only to him, I think, but I definitely see its effects. With every mile we walk, every day that passes, every hour, it takes another piece of light from him. I look at him, and my heart just aches. He didn't ask for any of this, you know? He wasn't looking for adventure. He just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And now, he carries this burden, a burden capable of breaking even the strongest spirits. But he keeps going. He keeps fighting. And that, more than anything, that gives me strength. If he can do it, then by heaven, so can I. I close my eyes for just a moment, just a split second, but then I snap them open again, sharply, as if I'd been struck. No, not now. I can't relax. Not for a single second. The night is so long, and there's so little time, so damn little time, to do everything that needs doing before the enemy finally catches us. It feels as if seconds are stretching into years, into endless ages with no beginning and no end. Every single minute is a small eternity, filled with this anxious anticipation of dawn, which will bring not only light, but also new dangers, new struggles. I hear only the soft crackling of the embers, slowly turning to ash, taking the last of their warmth with them. I hear the distant, piercing rustle of the wind, making its way through the stones, as if it's searching for something lost in this desolate landscape. And of course, his breathing. Steady, calming. It's like an anchor, holding me firmly to reality, preventing my mind from completely plunging into the abyss of dark, hopeless thoughts. As long as he breathes, there is hope. While he sleeps, I absolutely must stay awake. What drives me, I wonder? What compels me to sit here when my whole body aches with weariness and my very soul just yearns for peace? Loyalty. It's not just some word, tossed carelessly to the wind. It's not just a promise given out of politeness or courtesy. It's a feeling that permeates every single cell of my body, every fiber of my soul. It is the fundamental basis, the very foundation of everything I do. I promised Gandalf, back when we left Rivendell, that I would not leave him. I promised myself I wouldn't let him break. I will not abandon him. Never. Under any circumstances. Even if the whole world turns against us. Even if hope fades completely, and the very last spark dies in our hearts, I will be here, right by his side, until the very end, until the last drop of strength leaves me. And even if the end is a sad one, even if our mission somehow doesn't succeed, I will still be there, by his side, sharing his fate, whatever it may be, because it's the right thing to do, because Frodo is my friend, my master, my family. He is all I have now, and all that will remain if we lose everything else. It's a strange feeling, isn't it? Sitting here in complete, utter darkness, when everyone else in the world is fast asleep, and you're the only one carrying this heavy burden of vigilance. It's like being the sole lookout on a huge, heavily laden ship, sailing across a stormy, unpredictable sea. And whether it reaches port safely or crashes against some hidden, submerged rocks depends entirely on you. You feel every single wave that crashes against the hull, every gust of wind that tries to tear at the sails, and you know, deep down, that any wrong move, any split second of hesitation, could lead to absolute disaster. But you cannot retreat. You must stand firm. You must look forward, straight into that fathomless, inky abyss where any number of dangers might be hiding. Your eyes must be wide open, and your mind must be crystal clear. I look up at the sky, the stars. They seem so distant, so impossibly cold, yet at the very same time, they are so majestic and eternal. Millions of tiny flickering lights scattered across the boundless black canvas of night. They've watched countless sunrises and sunsets, witnessed the changing of entire eras, seen the birth and demise of great civilizations. They have seen empires rise and fall, kings and entire peoples come and go, like dust. And now they watch us. Just two small hobbits, trying to save the world from this encroaching, all-consuming darkness. It makes me feel both so insignificant, just a tiny speck of dust in this vast, infinite universe, and, at the very same time, an integral part of something much, much greater than myself, a piece of a truly grand story unfolding right now, at this very moment, under these very same eternal stars. I don't know if they remember it, but for me, it matters. It gives real meaning to my existence here. My eyes just fall, without me even thinking about it, back to his face. He looks so young, so incredibly vulnerable, illuminated only by the faint, struggling light of these embers. Sometimes I truly forget just how young he is, how far he is from an age where one could possibly bear such a monstrous, impossible responsibility. He has carried on his fragile shoulders more than any other hobbit, or even any man, could possibly bear. More than anyone should ever have to carry. And he does it for all of us. For those who are sleeping soundly now in their warm, safe beds, completely unaware of the mortal danger that hangs over them. For those yet unborn, for future generations, for this world we all love so very deeply. It is an enormous, overwhelming responsibility. And I see how it slowly, but surely, drains his strength, saps his life energy, like dry sand just absorbing water. He struggles. He tries. And I must be there so he doesn't break. Therefore, I simply must be strong. For both of us. I must be his eyes when his eyelids are heavy with sleeplessness and weariness, when he can no longer truly discern a threat in the darkness. I must be his ears when his hearing is dulled by constant strain, when he misses a rustle or a barely audible sound. I must be his hands when his fingers tremble with weakness and exhaustion, when he can barely hold his burden. I must be his support when his legs buckle and he is ready to fall. I must be his hope when his own begins to fade, when the darkness in his soul becomes too dense to pierce. This is not just a watch, you understand. It is not merely standing guard by a fire. It is a promise, a solemn promise given not only to him, my master, and my truest friend, but to the entire world, to all innocent creatures who depend on our success. And so, I sit. Time flows, but I don't feel its usual steady course. It seems to have slowed, turning into a viscous, thick substance through which each second just pushes with incredible difficulty, each moment stretching. I hear my own heartbeat, steady and insistent, beating out the rhythm of this long, unending night. Every breath Frodo takes feels like a small act of courage. Every exhale is a tiny victory over the encroaching nightmare. I listen to his every sound, every pause, just making sure he's still here, still fighting his demons in his sleep, still very much alive. That sound, that quiet yet constant whisper of his life, it's the only thing that truly connects me to reality, preventing me from completely drowning in the ocean of dark thoughts and despair that so easily penetrate the soul at such a deep hour. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the darkness begins to loosen its grip. I feel it not so much with my eyes, but with my skin, with my very being. The cold becomes less piercing, although the air is still fresh and damp. It stops biting and merely caresses now. The air somehow feels a little lighter, even though it's still complete darkness all around, and I see no glimmer of light on the horizon yet. But I know, I feel the approach of something new. It's the harbinger of dawn, a small, timid hint that the night will soon, finally, retreat, taking its shadows and its fears with it. And with it will come a new day with its own dangers, with its inevitable weariness, yes, but also with new, renewed hope. Hope that we will take another step forward, that we will overcome another obstacle, that we will get just a little bit closer to our impossible goal. I continue to sit. I don't stir. His breathing remains steady and calm. My heart beats in unison with his, pounding in my chest like a steady hammer. We are here. We have survived another night, another step taken, another obstacle overcome, another quiet battle won, while the whole world slept on. I look at his face, and now, as the faint pre-dawn light begins to very slowly break through the coal-black darkness, I see him a little more clearly. I see traces of weariness, yes, but also of an unyielding, stubborn determination. And in this moment, in this profound, approaching silence, disturbed only by our shared breathing and the quiet whisper of the wind, I feel a deep, inexpressible sense of gratitude. Gratitude that he is here, right beside me. Gratitude that I am here, right beside him. Gratitude that we are together, united by one goal, one single, shared destiny. And while he sleeps, while he gathers strength for a new day, I will be his watch, my night watch, my unyielding vigil. Until dawn, and far beyond, until the very end of our long, long journey. If you found this quiet moment of reflection as powerful and meaningful as I did, please consider giving this video a like, sharing it with someone you know, and subscribing to the channel for more stories like this one. Your support truly helps bring these tales to life. How quiet can the world truly be when it's guarded by a single shadow, unseen by those it protects, by those who live their ordinary lives, unaware, unconcerned, save for their daily routines? Have you ever paused to consider those who stand vigil, day after day, night after night, expecting no praise, no recognition, not even a whisper of thanks? They do it simply because their hearts are tied to the very earth they guard, to its inhabitants, its ancient rhythms, and its precious, fragile peace. Today, we journey into such a night, immersing ourselves in a tale of an invisible guardian, of the Strider, as he keeps his silent watch on the hills bordering the Shire. This isn't merely a story of watchfulness. It's a meditation on patience, on unyielding vigilance, and on that profound, almost sacred silence that blankets the world when the sun dips below the horizon, yielding to the embrace of stars and moonlight. Let me transport you to one of these secluded peaks, from which a majestic and peaceful view of the green, gentle hills of the Shire unfolds. It's a place right on the border, where you can see both the wild forests stretching into the distance and the neat, rounded hobbit holes nestled among the fertile fields. The sun is already setting in the west, its last farewell rays painting the vast sky in incredible, ever-changing shades of gold, deep purple, soft pink, and fiery orange. The air, despite being a summer evening, already feels cool and surprisingly crisp, carrying with it the mingled scents of damp earth, freshly cut grass, warm bread baking in distant ovens, and something subtly homely, cozy, unique to this blessed land. The Strider sits on an old, weather-beaten stone, his figure merging with the surrounding nature. His garments, made of thick, dark fabric, render him almost invisible against the twilight shadows. He is part of the landscape, unnoticed by the casual glance of a traveler, yet attentive to every minute detail, every rustle, and every shift in light. He doesn't just stare into emptiness. He absorbs this sunset with his entire being, every cell of his body, every nerve. He feels the day's sounds quieten, the last insistent chirps of cicadas fade, and the distant, yet still audible, echo of the Hobbits' cheerful songs from farms, porches, and open windows fall silent. His eyes, accustomed to long journeys through diverse lands and the changing light of all seasons, scan the horizon with an invisible, deep concentration, not yet seeking an obvious enemy. No. For now, they simply absorb the peace that heralds the coming of a long, dark night. This peace is a remarkably fragile thing, and the Strider knows that his unceasing vigilance and unconditional readiness for instantaneous action are the invisible shield that guards this piece from any encroachment. He unhurriedly takes out his old, well-worn pipe, slowly and ritually packing it with dried, aromatic leaves he collected himself in the wild groves. A spark from the flint flashes for a moment, illuminating his focused face. The smoke, light and fragrant, rises slowly in a thin stream into the already darkening evening air, gradually dissipating into it, just as the day fades, carrying away the last echoes of what has passed. This is not merely a habit, it is a deep, almost sacred ritual, a ritual of preparation for a long night watch. For him, night is not a time for rest and oblivion, but a time of special, extreme concentration, a time when the senses are heightened to their limit and consciousness becomes crystal clear. As the last, barely perceptible glimmers of the fading sun finally disappear beyond the distant, dark silhouettes of the mountains, the sky rapidly darkens, transitioning from lilac hues to deep, velvety blues, and then almost black tones. The first stars, timid and pale, begin to emerge on this boundless, dark canvas, like scattered diamonds on black velvet. The air grows even colder, chilling to the bone, and the strider wraps himself more tightly in his old but reliable travel cloak, woven from thick wool that provides warmth better than any hearth. In this approaching silence, every sound acquires a special, almost magical significance. The rustle of leaves under the nimble paws of a small nocturnal creature, the barely audible whisper of a bat's wings flying past, the distant, melancholic hoot of an owl hunting in the forest thicket, the soft, almost inaudible breath of wind that makes the grass on the hills whisper among themselves, as if telling ancient secrets. All this is not just sound. All this is part of his night orchestra, which he listens to with unparalleled attention. He doesn't just hear them. He listens, analyzes, trying to catch any, even the slightest deviation from the usual rhythm, any dissonance that might indicate a disturbance of the piece. This is not just a talent. It is a trained ability, developed over long years of wandering through the wildest and most dangerous lands, where survival depended on every rustle. He knows the Shire. He knows it thoroughly, like no one else, save perhaps its oldest inhabitants. He knows its hidden paths that wind through fields and groves, its gurgling streams that meander through valleys, its hidden hollows where no one goes but wild animals. He knows its spirit, a spirit of eternal peace, well-being, and simplicity. And this deep, comprehensive knowledge makes his watch even more responsible, even more personal. Down there, in the cozy holes and warm homes, hundreds of hobbits sleep, immersed in serene slumber, their dreams likely full of pie scents and the sounds of cheerful feasts. They are serene and happy because they believe in the inviolability of their land, in its unwavering protection. They do not know about the shadows that sometimes try to creep towards their borders from the wild lands, bringing threat. They do not know about larger beasts that might get lost and pose a danger to domestic livestock, to young plants. And they certainly do not know that at this very moment, under the cover of deep night, someone, unseen and silent, sits on a cold hill and stays awake for their peaceful sleep, for their tranquil existence. The moon rises higher and higher in the sky, its silvery cold light flooding the hills, transforming them into a magical, fairy tale landscape where every bush and every tree casts long, fanciful shadows. The shadows lengthen, taking on strange, shifting forms that dance in the wind like spectral figures. This is the time of deepest night, a time when the world seems frozen, motionless, immersed in complete stupor. But the Strider is not frozen. He moves slowly, almost silently, his steps making no sound, only the faint, barely perceptible rustle of his cloak. He changes his position to encompass the maximum area with his gaze, so that no corner of the Shire, not even the most distant, remains unnoticed. He checks the perimeter, paying attention to every bush, every stone, every shadow that might conceal something unusual. Is there anything new? Anything that shouldn't be here? Has the delicate balance of nocturnal life, which he knows so well, been disturbed? His eyes scan the horizon, and his ears catch every sound, searching for any change in the familiar pattern of the night. Sometimes he stops at the very edge of the hill, looking down at the sleeping villages, whose lights have long since gone out, plunging everything around into utter darkness. Only occasionally, very rarely, a glowing ember in a fireplace flickers, visible from afar, like a tiny spark of life in a sea of darkness. The smoke from the chimneys that rose during the day has long since dissipated, and now only a slight, barely perceptible warmth hangs over the Shire, emanating from the sleeping houses, from the warmth of the living hearts beating within. He imagines cozy rooms, warm beds, the deep, serene sleep of children and adults. This sight fills his heart with tenderness and an even greater, unshakable determination. It is for this peace, for these peaceful scenes, that he stands guard. It is for these priceless moments that he is willing to spend the entire night under the open sky, exposed to cold, wind, and potential danger that always lurks beyond the civilized lands. Time flows, especially slowly, in the night's silence. Hours here are measured not by the movement of hands on a clock face, but by the movement of distant stars across the sky, by the changing moonlight that intensifies and fades, by the barely perceptible changes in the sounds of the night that quieten and then revive. It seems as if the entire world is frozen, plunged into suspended animation, but in reality, it merely slows down, breathes deeper, becomes more concentrated. The Strider feels this rhythm. He becomes part of it, his own breathing adjusting to the slow, steady pulse of the night, to its eternal, unhurried movement. His thoughts are clear and calm. There is no haste, no worries that plague ordinary people during the day. There is only the task, only the present moment, filled with deep vigilance and an awareness of his purpose. His mind is a sharp blade, ready for action, but for now, peacefully sleeping in its sheath. He recalls other nights, countless nights spent on watch, nights in distant, dangerous lands, where every rustle could mean the approach of a deadly enemy, where every creak of a branch could be the last sound before an attack. Nights in pouring rain that soaked him to the bone, or in a blizzard where the wind howled like 1,000 ghosts, and snow blinded his eyes. The night near the Shire is different. There is no constant tension, no nervous tremor of awaiting an attack, but there is constant responsibility. Responsibility for a peace that many take for granted, for the well-being of those who don't even suspect his existence. This responsibility is physically lighter, but it is no less important, and sometimes even more significant, because it requires not only the strength and skills of a warrior, but also wisdom and endless patience. Somewhere far, far away, at the very edge of hearing, a long, solitary wolf howl echoes. It sounds like an ancient, mournful song, filled with wild longing and a reminder of boundless, untamed expanses. The Strider listens intently. It is not a threat. but rather a reminder of the wildness that always remains beyond the cultivated lands, always waiting for its hour beyond the borders of order. He knows that these wolves rarely approach the borders of the Shire, preferring deeper forests and inaccessible mountains where no one disturbs them. But their presence, even so distant, reminds him of the eternal line between home and wilderness, between civilization and untamed nature. It is on this line that he stands, like a living boundary, like an invisible barrier. With each hour, the moon slowly begins to descend to the west. Its light becomes softer, less sharp, gradually losing its cold, silvery brightness. The cold chills to the bone, penetrating even through the thick fabric of his cloak. But the strider has long been accustomed to it. He moves more frequently to maintain circulation, performing a few slow, almost imperceptible warm-up exercises, hardly lifting himself from the ground so as not to betray his presence. He is like a shadow, dancing among other shadows cast by tall trees and rounded hills. His sight and hearing are sharpened to their limits. No owl will fly by unnoticed. No cunning fox will slip through dense bushes without his knowledge. He is the living embodiment of vigilance, the very essence of the watch. And then, finally, in the east, where the sky merges with the horizon, it slowly begins to lighten. It happens barely noticeably, as if someone very slowly and carefully is increasing the world's brightness. First, the deep purple and dark blue tones of the night sky dissolve into lighter, translucent shades. Then the first, timid hints of pink, orange, and peach appear, heralding the dawn. This is a moment the strider awaits with a special feeling. A feeling of duty fulfilled, deep satisfaction, but also anticipation of a new day that brings its own concerns and paths. The sounds of night gradually give way to those of morning. The first birds begin to sing their timid, still sleepy songs, as if waking from sleep and greeting the new day. The air becomes even fresher, saturated with the moisture of morning dew. Its cool crispness invigorates and purifies. The Shire slowly, unhurriedly awakens. Through the twilight that still clings to the hollows, the clear outlines of houses, trees, and winding streams begin to emerge. The distant, muffled bark of a dog, the clear crow of a rooster announcing the start of a new day, the barely audible creak of a door opened by an early hobbit going out for milk. All these are undeniable signs that life is returning to its usual course, that the world is once again filled with movement and sounds. The strider lowers his head, his gaze tired but deeply satisfied. Another night has passed peacefully, without incident. Another night, the Shire slept under his invisible, reliable protection. He rises from the stone on which he spent most of the night, stretches, loosening stiff muscles and joints. His legs are light, despite the long hours of stillness and vigilance. He is ready to continue his journey, but before leaving, he casts one last, long look at the waking lands, at the very lands that were the object of his watch. The sun slowly, solemnly appears above the horizon, painting everything around in warm, golden tones, dispelling the last shadows. The dew on the tall grass sparkles like myriad tiny diamonds, reflecting the rays of the new day. Morning mist, light and ethereal, rises over the valleys, adding mystery and unreality to the landscape. The strider smiles. It is a quiet, inner smile, filled with deep peace and a sense of unbreakable, almost mystical connection with this world, with this land. He will not wait for the first hobbits to emerge from their cozy holes to start their day. He will not allow himself to be seen. His work is done before dawn. His presence should not disturb their serenity and sense of security. He is a shadow that leaves with the first rays of the sun, dissolving into the coming day. He slowly descends the hill, his steps soft and almost silent, as if he leaves no traces. He heads towards the distant, dark forest, where a new path awaits him, new dangers, new adventures, but always with the thought that he can return here, to these borders, when the peace of the Shire again needs his invisible, silent watch. He leaves behind only slightly flattened grass and a faint, elusive trace of his presence, which the morning wind will soon erase, carrying it away as if he had never been there. But the memory of his vigilance, though not consciously realized by the inhabitants of the Shire, remains in the very air, in the unwavering silence, in the tranquility of these green, fertile lands that continue to flourish and prosper. Thus, the world lives, protected by those who choose to remain in the shadows, who seek neither fame nor recognition. Their names are not spoken in the songs of bards. Their deeds are not recorded in dusty chronicles, yet their labor is invaluable, their sacrifice immeasurable. They are the unseen guardians who allow us to sleep soundly, allowing our dreams to be sweet and undisturbed, knowing that someone is awake, someone is ready to meet any threat while we dream the most wonderful dreams. This is a story about the Strider, but it could be the story of anyone who takes on the heavy burden of protection, asking nothing in return, who serves the world from a pure, selfless heart. And perhaps the next time you gaze at the endless starry sky or greet the dawn of a new day, you will feel the unseen presence of such a guardian, quietly smiling in response to your serenity, to your peace. For somewhere out there, on the borders of the world, there is always someone who keeps the night watch, guarding the peace of sleeping lands, allowing them to live their lives. And this is not just a story. It is a profound reminder that the greatest gifts, such as peace, tranquility, and safety, often come from the humblest and most inconspicuous actions, from the most devoted hearts. So the next time you enjoy a quiet night, when you fall asleep in your warm bed, remember that perhaps someone invisible to your eyes is standing guard, ensuring that silence, that harmony. And isn't that a beautiful thought? This idea of an invisible cloak over the world, woven from pure vigilance, boundless patience, and self-sacrifice, fills the heart with an amazing peace and confidence. For the world is not always as serene as it appears at first glance. Behind every moment of calm lies someone's invisible work, someone's sacrifice. And this Strider, this unseen guardian, is just one of many who, by the call of their heart, choose the path of service, the path of eternal vigil. He knows that his work never ends. It merely transitions from one night to another, from one dawn to the next sunset. It is an eternal cycle, and he is an integral part of it, a silent protector whose presence is felt not by sight, but by the soul, if only one knows how to listen to the deep rhythm of the world. If you found peace in this tale, please give it a like. Share it with a friend who might appreciate such quiet strength, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the unseen wonders around us. Your support helps us share these quiet reflections with more people.